Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and this podcast is dedicated to helping families love God and use tech. Today, we are joined by Anna. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, excited to have you here. And we're going to be talking a little bit about tech this summer. So since I had the opportunity to have you on, I want to talk about not just what we should do, but like what our family's actually doing this summer with technology, where it's working well, where it's not. And I thought we could jump into a couple of the 5 fixes. So from previous episodes, this idea of the 5 fixes is, all right, when we know technology's wrong, we know the 2 types of tech already. There's tool and rule. We know the reset. We can see that it's affecting our relationships and responsibilities, our emotions, sleep, enjoyment, and time. But now what? Like, we've built our hedges, but there's still life to be lived. And sometimes things go off in little ways. The 5 fixes are what help us with that. I wanted to jump in big picture and say, what does tech look like before we jump into any fixes or anything? Just the conversation for our family. We've got an almost 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old. School's out. Kids are running rampant. How's that going for us as a family? In your opinion, where are we seeing wins and where are we just belly flopping?
Yeah, it's happening. Summer's happening.
I mean, literally, we're recording this right now and the kids are somewhere.
Yeah, they were supposed to be watching one Magic School Bus and one Dude Perfect. So we'll see what actually
We'll see.
happens.
If they show up partway through this episode, you'll know it happened.
Yeah. I feel like we're still getting acclimated to summer.
Yeah.
I feel it's only really been a week for us. So it still feels a little like we're all remembering how to be home together. And that is always a tricky transition. So I feel like we're still kind of...
In what way? Like, what is that? That makes sense to me, but
okay,
what's
we're
the transition?
also moving, and that adds a whole
That's true.
other layer to everything.
Yeah. We're staying in Washington State.
Yeah, we're not moving far. We're just moving
Friends who just heard that for the first time. Sorry.
Down the street. So, but most of our house is packed up. So some of us are doing better than others with having their stuff packed. But I think that's contributing to some of the angst we're having. Yeah. Some of it is transition, and some of it is life transition of we can't get the things out that we want to get out.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, summer ended, so now structure's gone. And like some people,
Two people
live off structure.
Me and another child really thrive on structure and routine. And I feel like we've not had that the last 10 days. So I think I'm leaning more towards trying to wrestle some structure back into our schedule. It just feels really hard because I know it's probably going to be impossible until the end of July. Like, it's just going to be what it is. Like, I keep wanting to be like, we're going to have the chore chart and I'm going to make this little thing. You have to do these 10 things every morning. And I'm like, that's just not going to happen because every day has just been a little bit of a whirlwind. So I'm trying to lean into that and be okay with the lack of structure. I don't think we're there yet, but I'm aware of it. I'm aware that it's happening.
It's the first step towards healing.
I'm acknowledging it.
Yeah.
I know that we don't like it, and we're working on that. So
that's the family structure,
yeah,
like the daily schedule structure.
Yeah.
And then our lives are also just
literally
in boxes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like we probably have watched a little more TV than we normally watch in the summer for survival, like because we've also releasing books this summer.
August 13th.
So that
lionpress.org.
It's all happening at once, which is amazing. So I think normally in the summer we kind of default to like, we don't really watch a lot of TV because they're outside. The weather also has not been great.
No, Washington weather's been awful until a week ago.
They think they've just not, I don't feel bad about what they've watched, but it's just maybe a little bit more than they typically do because it's just been a little chaotic. But
yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, which is my question is like, how are we doing just in starting off? Because when we run this podcast, like we notice when we talk to people, people feel the need to like explain themselves when we're just like in their presence because they know what we do for literally a day job. And so if someone's like checks their phone or if like someone's on technology or they're explaining even like their weekend and be like, oh yeah, our kids just put out not that much. Like we'll get explanations for like why this isn't their norm and like they're totally do different things. That's not our goal. Like we're not perfect people who are now coming down from on high to be like, no, be more like us. Like we're leading a family with 3 kiddos who happen to think tech is pretty cool and who react to a lack of structure the same way as every other 10-year-old, 8-year-old, and 5-year-old. Like, it's life. And we recognize in our children sometimes when things aren't the best. Or like, hey, we see that you like doing that, but you turn into a little hooligan. Maybe we can do something else. And so I wanted that out there because I've seen the same thing, both on the structure side of like, oh, we do great as long as we have this cadence and this rhythm. And whether it's homeschool or whatever school you send your child to, like there is a rhythm and a cadence that does change when you hit summer.
Yeah.
And we feel that. And even as someone who's a little more on the present child / disco ball version of humanity, I don't mind structure changes so much. You can feel it. On that then. So I've talked before about 5 fixes. And the 5 fixes are beneficial stress, analog adventures, loving boundaries, purposeful tech, choosing the tech that's best for us, and pointing to hope. So if those are our 5 fixes, I guess want to dive into just the beneficial stress piece. This is coming from Jonathan.
How we're doing that?
Yeah, like what does that look like practically? Because I can talk in theory, as I do a lot when it's just me. But beneficial stress, we get it from Jonathan Haidt, it's not his initial idea. He's citing research, but he comes up with the idea
a lot from
anti-fragility.
His other book with Greg Lukianoff. They talk about it a lot more.
Coddling of the American Mind.
Yes.
Was you were saying the title there. And so the beneficial stress is the idea of responsibility, risk, and he says free play, but I found that over the age of like 10 or 11, people like lose what that means. So I just inserted relationship because it's a third R.
Well, I think we've just cut out free play.
We have.
That age group.
And I've decided and maybe you can give me feedback on this. I say relationship because it requires so much risk and responsibility and you end up free playing. Like if you have the other 2 in place, it's not risk and responsibility to play video games in front of a screen. Like that's as safe as you can be with a relationship. Like a relationship, like, oh, can me and my friends go to the park? Well, that's free play.
Yeah, they need to do that. I think part of it is independent. Like in carving, you have to be really purposeful to get them a chance
so should I keep it as
that? I don't know. You just have to think about that language because I'm thinking about our oldest and we've really worked hard to have chances for them to independently play. And I still make our kids do quiet time in the summer. Like
they don't take naps. Like what does that look like?
They all do about an hour of like you all go to a separate room and have a game, or you can play whatever you want, but you're just playing by yourself for an hour.
And we don't have independent screens.
No,
so it's not
they're
like
playing
you can
a
go
board
play
game. They're reading a book. They're making race car tracks. Like
he's building a board game based on Green Ember now.
Yeah, and I think if we didn't have time for him to do that, and that's been something we very intentionally have done. So I've selfishly done that. It's been less about like, I need you to grow as a child and
like,
more,
mommy needs time.
I need an hour where you guys are not talking to me and asking me for something. It's come out of that. But I think a big benefit is that they're able to do that. So sorry, that was just the really, because it is good.
No,
like I'm seeing
that's
like
the kind of thing I want.
He does free play. Like he'll have his best little buddy come over and they'll make up games together and it'll go from like they're playing some made up card game to they'll go outside and just play one-on-one for a half an hour. And I think that's important. And that fits into that category too. But I think playing by yourself and being okay being alone is a different piece of that.
So free play might need to come back into that. And by the way, the one-on-one is against a kid who's a full foot taller than him.
Well, it's just his best buddy. All his friends are a foot taller than him.
That's true. That's a good point. No, it's all right. So then beneficial stress with the 3 areas that Haidt points out in beneficial stress and the idea that he's getting at, I'll just explain it here. Listeners, if you haven't read the book, Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, please get it. Please read it. Borrow it from a friend. Get it from your library. Purchase the money because it's worth your time and investment.
Purchase the money?
Purchase the book. Spend the money.
Can we purchase the money?
It's investing. It's 7% anyway. Shows must be over. We hear the footsteps. We've been ID'd. Hi, honey.
We're still working.
Is the show over, honey?
Okay,
it looks like they followed the rules. That's the good news.
Can you go get dressed?
brief interruption there. Where I was headed with that, with buying the monies, was buy the book because it's worth it. He talks about anti-fragility and the idea that he uses the analogy of a tree and the biodome where scientists were trying to make a fully sustainable living environment. And they grew trees and plants and everyone was supposed to create their own oxygen within this space. And they realized the trees were falling over because they'd grow really healthfully, but without wind, they don't put down good roots. And then he says that's basically what children are. They're an anti-fragile system, like our immune systems. If you never experience a germ and your body never has to fight one, then you never have a strong immune system. If our children never experience stress, then they're not ready for it and they'll just feel anxious all the time because they don't know how to inhibit and how to overcome and how to find joy in the difficulties of regular everyday life. So beneficial stress, the three areas he gives are responsibility, risk, and free play. So then for our family, let's talk about both what do we do in those areas, but without making this a bragathon of like, look how great we're doing. So that's not the point.
Yeah, like, I don't think we're the best.
Where do we apply it? Where have we seen it work? And maybe an area we see room for improvement. But starting with maybe responsibility?
Okay.
Or do you want to mash them all?
How
like,
to increase
where do
responsibility?
where do we see responsibility? Like, how do we know there's a need for more responsibility?
Okay.
Like, where is that a correct place to go, hey, we've got a problem. Our reset is off. Where can we apply responsibility? And then how does that look in our family? Because we have done it in at least one area I can think of off the top of my head.
I think we see a need for it. Like this, I felt like we felt that this week with the chores of like when the boys especially get to just play and dictate their whole day.
Oh, yeah.
They just go a little bonkers and they do better when they have to work a little bit. So I think that has been an area where we all have to kind of regroup and say, like, I'm not making you do chores to be mean. It's to kind of recalibrate your brain. I think that's the Anna Lembke book too, of like your pain.
Dopamine Nation.
Your pain pleasure balance is off. And if all you get to do all day long is whatever you want, like it ends up not being super satisfying. And I think we see that in their brains too. And their attitudes are better, more kind, and they have more self-control when they have had to work a little bit. Even if it's just go pull weeds.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, what kinds of responsibilities do you give them?
They were bonkers. And it was like, you're not listening, you're not responding, and like you're not in trouble, but you're just going to go work. And so today they had to go pull a bucket of weeds today. Owen has to mow the yard.
Yeah.
They have to vacuum. We just do a lot of household chores. And then we've started to let them... well, that would be the work. I think that's the work. And then we're trying to outsource our oldest kid to work other places because he's in that kind of awkward limbo land of he wants responsibility and he's just a little bit too little. But he gets to have one little summer job. That will be good for him. He gets to water the neighbors' plants while they're out of town. And he has to ride his bike there and he has to do it every day by himself. Yeah. So I think that
And they live like multiple blocks away. Near the piano teacher, actually. Which I've talked before about him riding to piano practice. So it's in a similar vein of like one busy street, several blocks away, and like
it'll be a
good level of
responsibility
with low cost.
Yeah. Yes. So I feel like they function a little better when they've had to be responsible for somebody besides themselves.
Yeah.
So
I love
we've
that.
seen that ebb and flow in different seasons.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that like at nighttime, like, hey, you're going to read your sister a book tonight. Like, I like that responsibility piece you've added of like, hey, like I could read this and I'm not just outsourcing something. I saw someone post like, where's the line between, making your child work and like abusing the fact that they're free labor versus like training your child up in the way they should go and like teaching your kid how to be an adult. And the line was, if my child takes more time and does a worse job to do something I could have done it faster and I could have done it better. But I'm allowing my child to do this because they need the responsibility. Then like, I'm probably cutting the right amount of responsibility there. And
also they just live at your house and they need to contribute to the family.
Yes, I
know there are people who take that way too, like child labor, but I'm like, we are a new generation of people who have not had to work at all to make the family household run. Yeah. And I don't know
I don't think it did us any favors.
I enjoy that. That's wonderful that I don't have to do anything to turn on the water or like everything is so easy. And I don't think that's always beneficial. So the chores that our kids are having to do are not hard chores. They are like,
they're not unsafe.
No,
Like,
this keeps
we've
our
trained them
family
to do the
intact
things.
of like, we're all like, you're eating every day too. You're welcome. Start contributing to the group here.
That's good.
I have no qualms about making people do chores. Like, get out there and do something.
And the responsibility is important for them, like to recognize this isn't just character investment for like sometime in the future. Like your child needs to know that he or she has value to your family. And so what you mentioned of like helping, like being responsible for someone other than yourself is like, that's a human development thing.
Yes.
And young people need to recognize like my value. And this is again from Haidt's book, but like the number of young people in their teens who would say, like, I don't believe I'm of value to my family or to society, either because they've been directly told that or because they just look around and they're like, if I went away, like nobody would notice. Like that piece, they need to recognize that that's not true on a spiritual level, on a societal, relational level, that's not true. Like we need your investment in this family. And so another thing I noticed, these are Anna's awesome at making these things, but another one I've noticed for responsibility is like, hey, you're old enough, like you need to scrape your plate, you need to rinse it, it needs to end up in the dishwasher.
They're probably too old. I've really delayed on that because I do
but
feel like
5, like Hadley can do that.
She can do it, but we've just been slow on that. And I do feel like our homeschool friends are better at that stuff because you have to be. And the boys have just been at school and we just came off baseball season where it's like, we're not even having dinner. And I was like, why am I doing all the dishes? Like,
that's not an encouragement, by the way. That's just us recognizing we're not doing dinner during baseball season.
No, it's just a season. Like we knew that going in when it was going to be bonkers. But I have a friend who has similar aged kids. I was like, I need to be giving them more responsibility for that. They can all contribute. The other one I was thinking of that is kind of from, what's her name? Let Them Be Kids. She talks about kind of responsibility in the
I don't remember her name.
In the relationships, but on like teaching your kids to advocate for themselves, the responsibility of like giving them that confidence. So we've started making our kids, like if we don't go out to eat a lot, well, if we go to the coffee shop, let them be kids. Jessica Smart, is that who it is?
I believe so. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Jessica Smart. It's a really great, in a similar vein as the coddling, but much more mom, like it's written by a mom. Okay. So less academic. Not that it's not. It's very well written.
But it was who it's written to. Moms
she's
versus
writing to moms.
Coddling was written to like educators and
Okay, so the responsibility of like advocating for yourself, we're working on that piece right now. I feel like of you need to order at a restaurant, you need to go up to the counter if you need a straw or whatever you didn't get, you have to go back to the counter and say, may I please have whatever, and you need to wait and like have somebody acknowledge you, and they're learning to do that.
Get your own samples at Costco.
Yeah, they did that this weekend, and it's really good practice for them to like go wait your turn and make eye contact and say please and thank you and have those interactions of like, you're not 3, I'm not getting that for you. You can walk up to a grown up and ask for what you need. And then we're working on that at school of like, you need to start learning to advocate for our teacher, such as we had one spelling list that just made me insane. It wasn't a spelling test. It was a grammar test that was being given as a spelling test. And so our oldest, who is a very good speller, has not struggled with spelling. And he was like...
Because it was all apostrophes, right? It was whether it was S apostrophe or apostrophe S.
But
it was all by sound.
To his teacher, you won't be surprised if you hear this. It was a frustrating spelling test because it wasn't a spelling test.
I think the emails showed that.
Yeah. I really tried to restrain myself. I didn't do very well. But I am really working hard, especially he's 10. I'm like, you have to be the first person to ask the question. I cannot be the first one to go. If you don't understand something, you have to ask first. That builds confidence. Like, this is your assignment. And as we were teachers, like, I appreciated that so much when a kid could advocate for themselves. That gives you, I feel like people respond really well to that. Like, for a lot of reasons, it's going to go well for you. Like, that kid is learning confidence and learning to be assertive and learning to advocate for themselves and to say to an authority figure, like, something I don't understand or this doesn't look right to me. And like that they're not above, not to be respectful, but that grown-ups still can make a mistake, and or maybe I just don't understand it and I need some help. So we're working on that area of responsibility to advocate.
Yeah. No, and those are all amazing ways to like build responsibility.
There's a million more that we are not doing.
There were a million more that we definitely aren't doing, but that those are ways. My hope in doing this was, all right, we're in the middle of summer. You can assess for yourself right now, just sitting in your car, like, how's your reset going? Right? Like, how is our technology impacting relationships, responsibilities, emotion, sleep, enjoyment, time? Thumbs up, thumbs down in each of those areas. And then go, okay, well, my kids are relationally, you mentioned going bonkers. Like, we ate breakfast. It's 8:30 in the morning and they are losing their minds. They may need some more responsibility. Right? And in our family, that's one of the things that shows off for us is when it's not that their attitudes is they are physically incapable of controlling their bodies. Those old sayings are like, oh, that's, so stereotypical that, whatever, boys are puppies effectively. And they're like, no, like it's as though you just took a bag of puppies.
They have a running joke that they just like cannot break out of. That's what they were doing today at breakfast.
They'll start riffing on their joke.
It's like they're in a 2-man act and they can't break out of it. And then they have to throw them outside and be like, go do your 2-man show outside while you're pulling weeds. And then you can come back and it'll be over.
Yeah, it's great. Just shake it out. So responsibility can help with that. Risk, though, is another way we can break through this. And I like this one because I was raised by 4 sisters who were not the most risk prone, I guess you'd say. Like, it occurred to me, we were having dinner at a friend's house one time and someone came in and like, hey, Johnny stuck up a tree. And we went out and these 2 boys had decided to climb this tree as high as they could. And the older brother took the younger brother way beyond what he was able to do. And it occurred to me at that moment, like, I never once climbed a tree growing up, like with my 4 sisters.
You did a lot of other insane things.
I did, but not because of my sisters. Those were all my ideas. Mm-hmm. But when we're talking about risk, like, that's not something I think of necessarily.
Physical risk. They probably took other risks. There were other risks happening.
We had deep intellectual risks that we took as a family. Very risky thinkers. But that idea of like these young boys were just taking risks as part of their free play. And he got down fine. Don't worry, everyone. No one got hurt. But it was a funny moment for me to like reflect on like, I've never once done this. Where do we see risk with our kids or in our family as a benefit, as a beneficial stress of like, what, this is a risk you just need to take. I can think of, like you mentioned baseball. Like, there are risks inherent with sports and in baseball getting hit. And Owen got plunked hard one game. He's a lefty, and 10-year-olds don't know how to pitch to lefties. And he got hit, like didn't glance, was a direct hit, ball dropped. And for the rest of the season, you could watch him like, it was the next game. Kid threw a pitch right past him. And he just stared through the fencing at me, sitting in the bleachers, and was so mad. But the idea being like, it's okay if you don't enjoy baseball, but like, this is a risk we're willing to take. Like, I'm not putting you in harm's way. This kid's not throwing 90.
No.
He's throwing 55. It will hurt if you get hit again. But like, that's a risk that you're developing, overcoming your fears, because that's the number one thing he feared. And it did mess up his enjoyment of the sport. And at the end of the season, he was like, I don't know if I want to play again next year. But what if you didn't? Oh, he found out National League pitchers don't have to bat in baseball. And he's like,
so he's going pro
is that an option? I could just pitch? Amazing. But like, that impacted him, and that's a beneficial stress, because now a couple weeks after season, he started wanting to pitch and hit again. Like, he's getting back into it, overcoming that fear and recognizing like, oh, I lived and I can do this, and I wasn't going to get hurt even if it did hurt. So that was one I thought of, but I don't know that ties in with the bigger picture of like summer tech, take a risk.
Well, I think that at least I have not read Anxious Generation yet.
Oh.
But in the coddling, I did read The Coddling of the American Mind. And I think when they're talking about that anti-fragility in that section, a lot of the risk part comes with unsupervised play is like a healthy, in an appropriate way, right? Like, you're not going to leave your 18-month-old unsupervised. Right. Like, there's different levels of unsupervised play depending on your location and your age of your children. But to allow them space where they're playing without you, I think is healthy risk. Like, and they're taking relational risks and they're taking physical risks that if you were there, you would be intervening, right? It's the same as like at recess when it's like, they need to just be able to play and not have an adult be micromanaging their play. So I think we have worked hard on that. We do live in a very safe neighborhood, but they'll go out and play in the street, and they've learned, they know how to get out of the way. Like, but they're 10 and 8 and 5. And like, they know how to do that. So I think that's been a beneficial risk. And
a responsibility.
It's also, I feel bad even talking about, I know this is not an area I struggle with, whereas I think probably a lot of moms
like feeling anxious about
I'm probably
their
a little laissez-faire in our parenting on this, where
right.
I feel like I am my mother's daughter of like, I either can be a 10 out of 10 of like something stressed me out, and this does not stress me out at all to have our kids go play in the street and go play and to have them have unsupervised play. And that's just kind of been from the beginning. Like they would jump off everything. I'm like, great, they're jumping, they're landing. Like
they did make people nervous.
They did. I feel like I've made people uncomfortable, so I don't feel like I'm
okay.
I don't think I'm unsafe, but I've had a couple, like I feel like I have friends who are very anxious and kind of a little more cautious in their parenting. And I know I have made them uncomfortable of like that I let them go in the street and play. Like that makes people uncomfortable. Yeah. I don't think there's any reason to be uncomfortable with it. Statistically, there is not reason to be afraid of predators, or like just statistically when you look at the stats on crime.
Right.
That is not.
There are reasons for, if you're on social media, be afraid.
And depending on where you live, that might be very different. Like that is not a
There are
risk
some streets that aren't safe for young children.
Kids to go outside.
And we live in a double cul-de-sac in a sidewalk to neighborhood. Yes. The most thing you have to fear is those Amazon drivers, because they come through quick.
Yeah. So I know that I default a little more on the relaxed side to that anyway. But
so then not shaming parents saying, why aren't you letting your kid out? But recognizing in your space, your situation, your comfort level, with your mom raising you that way, probably like you did run the cul-de-sac. We were outside and
constantly. Yeah.
Like had the neighborhood houses with people who were on the same page with kids. And like, so you've experienced that, whereas I did not.
We were outside in the cul-de-sac all summer long, like can come back when it gets dark. And that was also the late 80s. Early 90s,
which was the height of the fear of you're going to get kidnapped.
It was, but I don't know if our parents were afraid
street
of that.
Smart.
I feel like that was what we were taught in high school. Anyway, so
all right, so that's the risk in the free play to throw it in. So then to sum this up, to not belabor the point, when we talk about summer technology, families, if you are hearing or you're reflecting on your own tech use and going, you know what, like tech is getting a little out of hand. We said you could do it this one day because it was raining again in Washington in late June. And we want you to experience childhood and to be healthful. And we're noticing some of your relationships and your emotions and your sleep getting off. We can add responsibility, like give your child practical things to do as part of your family, not to punish him or her, but to help him or her recognize this is part of what it takes to make the family work, make our lives run, and recalibrate their brains so their two-man act can go outside for a little bit and come back in.
Yeah, and I think that just like we were saying in the beginning, it does take some settling into, and I think there's just the pushback and like getting past the point where they're like, I'm bored, and they're
don't feel the need to fix every boredom.
It's okay that they're bored. Like I feel that tension. This last week and a half of like, how do we walk that line of like, I want you to have fun things to do this summer, and I'm happy to coordinate play dates, and I'm not going to be a slave to your entertainment all summer. Like that is not my job to entertain you constantly, but it does feel like it's a struggle, especially if you have kids who are like, I'm bored. Yeah. So to like, but that everything we know about boredom is that like it leads to creativity, and like that is a beneficial part of child development, that they need to be bored, and in our own spiritual development, like you have to have quiet space and downtime and free thinking space. And so if every minute is filled with I'm occupying it, they don't get that.
Yeah. Well, and to steal another point actually on the risk and the responsibility, like when you come to analog adventures, another one of the 5 fixes, the idea of like, all right, but we're also going to invest in this. Like, it's not just, well, go away. Like, you should be able to amuse yourself, child. Like, why don't you? They should. But there is an aspect of like, we can also help. Like, if our children have only learned to have fun in a digital space, real life is hard to learn. And Anna Lemke, again, the Dopamine Nation, it takes 30 days for your brain to get used to this.
Right.
Which we mentioned books at the very beginning. Anna's book, The Graceful Disconnect, talks about this of like, how do we actually feel joy and peace in a digital space? But coming out August 13th. But the analog adventure side of camp, like we are investing in a couple camps. Some of them just little local day camps. And we're like, hey, our kids can only come to these days because stuff's happening. And Owen's going to his first overnight camp.
Yay.
Which is going to be amazing. And that is an investment from us. As laissez faire as we might be. And their grandparents were like, hey, can you come help us? Like, camp is expensive. And we couldn't foot it. And we're like, hey, Grandma and Papa, here's our opportunity. Would you help make this happen? And we strongly encourage you approaching grandmas and papas because it's so tangible and they love to see their grandkids be safe and grow, and let them read Anxious Generation and they will throw the monies at camp. Okay. But that idea of risk and responsibility in analog adventures is also available as well. And yeah, the free play comes with it, although camps often aren't unstructured. But the free play can be a great part of summer with the boredom, making your own rules, games, read a book for 15 minutes. Yeah. You did do the reading bingo. That's been good. I want to.
Oh, yeah. I don't know what that fits into.
Yeah. It doesn't fit into maybe any. Is responsibility maybe? I don't know. Boredom. Boredom. It fits into boredom.
It fits into preventing the summer slide, gives them something to do.
Yeah.
They do. It's just a bingo chart and they have to
accomplish tasks.
Accomplish reading or math
and
challenges.
Henry does it for the
blizzard.
Blizzard for the sugar.
I'll buy you all the blizzards you want. Keep reading.
Keep reading, little man. Dude, the kid's, I'm excited to see where his little brain goes. Anything else for the good of the order as we finish this thought?
Nope.
Okay. Well, then thank you guys for being a part of this conversation. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me, Nathan at gospeltech.net, or Anna at, is it gospeltech or are you flintandiron.org?
Flint and Iron.
You're flintandiron.org. That's what I thought. And we're getting visited again by yet another person. So our time is up. Please share this with people if you have found it to be helpful. Follow us on social medias at Love God Use Tech, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And join us next week as we continue this conversation about how we can love God and use tech.